So I think what I'd like to do is start off with a little bit of a definition of this kind of unusual word, anomie. It's a French word, and it was coined by, there are probably two primary founders of the field of modern sociology. One was Emile Durkheim, who coined this term, anomie, and the other was Max Weber, uh, German, I believe. And Durkheim, what he was trying to do, he was trying to understand why more and more people in modern culture, and he wrote in the late 1800s and was alive through the early 1900s, why more and more people in modern culture were doing something rather bizarre. They were committing suicide. And he was trying to understand the context for these extreme feelings of despair and isolation that people were experiencing. They were feeling many times desperately unhappy, so unhappy that they actually were in so much pain that they actually the best choice for them, they thought in that moment, was simply to stop existing. Uh, just a bizarre situation. He was trying to understand it sociologically. What were the conditions that resulted in that extreme choice? So here's a bit of a definition. It comes from Durkheim. It's a little more in modern terminology. The concept of anomie in sociology can be defined as a state of normlessness. Interesting term. Not having norms. This relates to the frame of reference concept in the Revelation, right? There's no frames. The frames are moving and unpredictable. A state of normlessness, disorder, or confusion in society and in individuals when the standard norms and values are weak or unclear. This lack of social or ethical standards can lead to disconnection, deviance, social instability, and often to extreme despair, culminating in suicide. So when we think of anomie, that's the state that Durkheim was trying to articulate and give us a word, a label, to explain this phenomenon that was uh, increasing in modern society to a degree that it had never appeared before. And part of what's intriguing to me about that description is that this is almost eerily similar, a similar description to some of the passages in the Urantia book, trying to describe the conditions of our rapid-paced and often chaotic culture. And the key passage for me is from paper 99, The Social Problems of Religion. During the psychologically unsettled times of the 20th century, amid the economic upheavals, the moral cross currents, and the sociologic riptides of the cyclonic transitions of a scientific era, thousands upon thousands of men and women have become humanly dislocated. They are anxious, restless, fearful, uncertain, and unsettled. And the revelators conclude, as never before in the world's history, they need the consolation and stabilization of sound religion. So if that is what our world needs, like, right, sound religion, how is it going to be that all these stressed out folks that they're trying to describe, these folks struggling with anomie, how are they going to get that? And I think we all work with an assumption, and that is that whatever sound religion is, it has been shared with us in the Urantia revelation. I mean, I feel we've been beneficiaries of high quality religious thought and reality that we've managed to incorporate into our lives and that has been stabilizing and orienting for us. And for some of us, it's been life-saving. Yeah, I know some number of folks in the Urantia movement who probably would not be with us if it wasn't for the sound religion that the revelation has given them and that God has given them through that medium. So if sound religion is in the Urantia book, however, there's a challenge because there's also a lot of non-spiritual detail in the revelation, a lot of history, a lot of science, a huge amount of information. And it's probably the case that the vast majority of these folks who are struggling, these dislocated men and women, they're not likely to read through 2,100 pages to find the spiritual insights that they so desperately need. In today's culture, actually, most people rarely focus on anything for any longer than about 5 minutes. So I think I've wrestled with, and I think many people have wrestled with this dilemma for some period of time of here's this treasure in this revelation, but most people won't have the stamina to wade through it, to really discern it and then begin to incorporate it and put it to use in their lives. So we have to find ways to distill, I think, the essence of what is the core of Jesus' actual teachings. And we have to distill that essence, and we have to develop effective ways to teach it, to share it with people who are struggling, the sisters and brothers all around us who are struggling, often mightily, often in a context of life or death choices. And that's the reality that we face as a result of the exigencies of modern culture. So I think in order to do that, we have to get good at a few things. I think, first of all, we have to get really clear on what the essence of Jesus' gospel really is. We have to develop ways of holding that simple message in our minds and in our hearts, and we have to find a way for ourselves to carry the essence of the spiritual truth of the revelation, to carry it around with us as much as possible all the time and put it into operation so that we experience the benefits and we're changed, right? And that's the second thing. So we have to articulate the gospel clearly for ourselves, a working version of it for ourselves. And then we have to actually live our lives in keeping with these higher truths. We have to cooperate with the Spirit's efforts to transform us, to change us, so that in a sense we're different. We actually have to become, to some extent, an embodiment of the gospel, of the sound religion that the revelators have shared with us. So that's a second step, right? One is to get clear on what the gospel is, and second, to begin to live it sufficiently to become an expression of it, an embodiment of it. And then thirdly, I think we have to get good at communicating those truths, sharing them with as many of these people out there who are incredibly overwhelmed and distraught, distracted. So I think all this is much easier to describe than it is to do. I think we really have to be dedicated to it. I don't think it's a small task. I think if we're proper about it, it really becomes the front and center goal of our lives. And I think it unfolds over years and decades. So it's a big part of who we are in this life. I think it has to become really important to us. So how can we more effectively go about doing these three things, right? We're getting clear on the core truths of the revelation of Jesus' gospel as they've been expanded in the Urantia book, what the revelators call the restatement of the religion of Jesus. Secondly, live these realities more fully to become these truths. And third, getting much more effective at communicating the message and ministering with it, really, to people all around us. So I think what I'd like to do and share some things with you related to that set of tasks and how to engage in it more effectively. And then we'll go ahead and open it up to conversation. So I want to share there are kind of three sets of resources that may be helpful in attempting to do this. Um, the first of these, boy, how do I describe this? It's in a sense, maybe the best way to describe it is that it's kind of a futuristic vision piece. It's a description of something that could conceivably come about in the next several hundred years, right? So this is long-term possibility thinking. And it offers some ideas. I'm going to show you a web page, a website. It offers some ideas that I'm hopeful are stimulative of our thinking to how to get ourselves prepared to understand the gospel, live it, and share it in ways that might help people who are struggling out in the culture. So this is again a vision statement, right? And at the beginning is sort of the purpose. It is the purpose of God, the infinite and eternal creator, our universal Father and Supreme Mother, to create all human beings as spiritual sons and daughters, to be in loving relationship with us, and to inspire us to love each other as sisters and brothers in the global family of God. In order for us to live our lives more fully in spiritual family, God calls us to gather together for worship and inspiration, fellowship and mutual support, growth in spiritual family relationships, and service outreach, so that all people might be uplifted and transformed in spiritual community. Remember, we're talking about helping people who are rootless and floating in the culture to find sound religion, to find a context that they can belong to and participate in that is nourishing and nurturing and grounding. Um, and this is important. Family is the master pattern of all personal relationships in creation. It is the symbolic lens of understanding through which each of us can grow to see who we really are and discern how best to relate to our Creator and to each other. God is first and foremost an all-wise, loving spiritual parent. We are God's beloved sons and daughters, sisters and brothers in a vast universe family. And there are some references to the text. So the focus here is on an actual way of living. The family way, or a way of life in the family of God, centers on 7 essential truths or experiences in spiritual family relationship. So this is targeted toward the first of the purposes we were talking about, is articulating a clear sense and an easily communicable sense of what the heart of the gospel is in modern terms, in language that people who have no familiarity with the Urantia book can be comfortable with and can assimilate, right? As Jesus said, giving the milk of truth to those who are babes in spiritual perception in a form that they can assimilate and integrate into their lives right where they are. So it's a way of life in the family of God with these 7 core spiritual truths as the essential experiences in that higher and transformative way of life. The spiritual parent-child relationships, sister-brother relationships, the remarkable revelation of the indwelling spirit, the will of God, love, eternal life, and faith. Then there's sections unpacking each of those core truths, and then a section on the family circles, arenas of fellowship and service, the inner family, the home family, the faith family, the interfaith family, and the global family. Then there's a section on the role of the Urantia book, and a section on the role of Jesus. And then in summary, there's a rearticulation of those 7 core truths. And then this to me is important. In order to be potent, however, these truths must come alive in our daily experience. They cannot be simply ideas we understand and believe. They must be truths we increasingly live out and become. The power of the family way lies in its ability to unify human experience if it becomes an actual way of living. There is great life coherence for the believer in the integration of family relationships on all conceivable levels, from the inner family to the home family, from the faith family of the local fellowship to the interfaith family of all believers, from the global family of all human beings to the universe family of all beings in God's vast creation. So, as I say, this is a vision piece, right? It's an envisioned possible future reality. And, you may like parts of it, you may not. It's more for stimulation and encourage us to imagine and hold the gospel in a way that could be articulated to the broader culture, that could be comforting to people who are looking for something that they can be part of, that begins to provide ethical and value norms, and provides a different vision of a way to live that could be remedying for the struggles that they engage in. So, how do we move forward with things along these lines, right? To hold the gospel, but then to help us live it out more fully, and then help us communicate it more clearly to the culture. Again, this is the primary challenge. Um, so here's another passage that I thought a lot about. It's from a section that I think is a remarkable section of the text, section 87:7, the nature of cultism, or really how the revelators, I think, intended it, the nature of symbolic spiritual culture, right? How does this phenomenon of culture that antidotes anomie, how does that happen? And one of the statements they make in that section, it's a very short section, half a page, but it's chock full. And one of the statements they make is, it is regrettable that so many modern believers in moral standards and spiritual values have no adequate symbolism, no cult or culture of mutual support, nothing to belong to. No adequate symbolism, no culture of mutual support, nothing to belong to. So, does this sound related to the problem of anomie? I rather think so. So here's a possibility, and this is the second sort of resource that I guess I want to share with you. Um, it's a possibility in response to uh, this need for an experience that people can have and a community that people can belong to. The second thing I want to share with you is an online worship service, and it's called Homecoming, a spiritual family gathering. And it's an experience that people can participate in, and find a sense of orientation and belonging in, both Urantia book readers and non-readers. The whole design of it, the way it's oriented, the language that's used is to be something that is satisfying for partakers of the revelation, but also in language, couched in language that is easily assimilated by people who have no familiarity with the text. And it's a combination, there's an initial hour that is a combination of some teaching, then breakout discussions, and then quiet worship. And then after that initial hour, there's a half hour of large group discussion where people can share what they've experienced during that first hour. So there's quite a bit of interaction and fellowship, both in a breakout of 3-4 people, and then in a large group conversation like this one. So this is the web page for the homecoming. And again, it's an articulation. It's a simple articulation of the gospel, the essence of the highest spiritual teachings in the Revelation, and an invitation to join us on Zoom. And then you can subscribe to what's called Urantia University Institute This Week, which will send you a link so that you can participate in the gathering, right? And it's weekly on Sunday mornings. There's a description of the format. And then also on this page, there's a link to the YouTube channel, the YouTube list, and some of the different recordings that we have. So if you click on this, what you get to, I think, is this. So this is the playlist for Homecoming, the spiritual family gathering. And we've got some short introductory videos, and then there's first of several. We've got some more that we're adding each week. And these are the themes, right? So a roadmap to a way of life in the family of God, parent-child relationship with God. And so this is an hour-long video with Elizabeth Callahan and myself doing some teaching, and then the larger group conversation. So the idea here is, and again, the goal is providing a medium and an experience for people to begin to get familiar with this different way to live, right? In keeping with the gospel that is orienting and grounding and satisfying and beginning to try to provide folks a sense of belonging and participating in something that antidotes the craziness of the culture, the normlessness of the culture, and begins to introduce people to the values and the experience of relationship, loving relationship with God and with each other in spiritual family. So, the idea here is, as a set of resources, you can come participate Sunday mornings, but it's also very simple to grab one of those videos. If you know someone that, for instance, had lots of experiences of struggle, right, in their family of origin and carry a lot of woundedness and are really grappling with that and hopeless and despairing and can't find a sense of connection or how to resolve those dilemmas, you can grab the video on spiritual reparenting, which is a self-contained module, pop it to them and say, here's something that might be helpful for you. So the idea is to have tools for ministry here that you can use both for your Urantia book readers and for people that you know, friends, family, who will never read the Urantia book. So I think I'll just go ahead and open it up now to any of your thoughts or questions, any experiences you've had personally or with other people with these challenging situations in our modern culture and how we can be of some help in trying to address them. Yeah, go ahead, Luis.
One of the issues that I find us Urantia book students, readers, facing on a regular basis is the very reality of dysfunctional relationships that end up manifesting at the societal level. And so I find very often that we are in need of revisiting our own behaviors and our own relationships to try to address some of the root causes of the dysfunctions that end up manifesting socially. And one of the big elephants in the room is actual abuse. Abuse that manifests in terms of emotional abuse, in terms of psychological abuse, in terms of physical abuse, all the way to one of the darkest forms of abuse, which is sexual abuse. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I believe that one of the important lessons that we have in the Urantia book when it comes to trying to deal with abuse, I would like to hear your perspectives on how we deal with our own relationships and our own presence in the lives of others, and even in our own personal behaviors that might end up sending us towards downward spirals of abusive behavior or intolerance or impatience.
We're speaking, when we talk about the family of God, we talk about the gospel that Jesus shared with us. We're speaking about two primary vectors of relationship, a vertical vector and a horizontal vector, right? The vertical vector of relationship is singular. It's me and God. I'm a child. God's my parent. And it's a parent-child relationship. And it's profoundly impactful on me. and the possibilities are eternal and endless. And then there's the horizontal vector, which is all of my relationships with my confrere, right? My brothers, my sisters, the people who are my co-equals in the family of God. And then in the universe sense, it's the higher celestial orders who are our sisters and brothers. And we have amazing encounters waiting for us. So there's the vertical vector, the horizontal vector. One of the challenges that comes up in conversation about the use of the family of God metaphor in our modern day as the primary paradigm, the primary metaphor to run with in our explication of the gospel, is so many people have grown up in screwed up families where abuse occurred, abuse of many kinds, including sexual abuse, which is a fundamental form of betrayal. It's a fundamental destruction and deterioration of the parental set of responsibilities, right? So how do you run with that metaphor when people have so much pain as a result of what they grew up with many times? And I think there's a response to that. I mean, the gospel, the central imperative of living in spiritual family relationships as the model for explicating the gospel is an ideal, right? And the question is, what's the direction of influence, right? Do our historical experiences determine how we understand God and what's available and not available with us in God? Or does it run the other way? Does the direction of influence run the other way? Can our relationship, the ideal of our relationship with God as a loving and nurturing parent and the experience of that, feeling the love, can that go back and heal the woundedness of families of origin and abuse of all kinds, betrayal of all kinds? And nothing can change the history, but what can be changed is that we are healed and made whole. God wants to heal us and make us whole in this parent-child relationship. Once we experience the transformation of that parent-child relationship and begin to be healed, then something really pretty miraculous happens. It begins automatically to change the way we relate to each other. The nurture and the correction, the healing of the parent-child relationship begins to flow down and into our relationships with each other all across the board. And we begin to be able to love and trust in ways that we never were before with the help of God and a result of God's healing us inwardly on that vertical dimension of parent-child relationship. So the power of the model and the metaphor is that it changes the direction of causation, right? Rather than me being a victim of my history, I become healed of my history, and I become made whole, and I begin to change the way I relate to my life and to all of my relationships. Go ahead, Monica, please.
Thank you for asking us to synthesize what is the gospel for me. And so for me, I'm saying it's eternal salvation of our identity, beginning here on this world, in accepting the gift of faith by the creator of all, and seeing this primal source as our spiritual parent, and therefore are we all siblings to one and all. And the solution is developing a sincere and personal relationship with this first source of love. What is driving me now, Marvin and others, is looking at how Jesus approached his interlocuteur, the person that he's speaking with, where it's a receptive environment, believing that, presuming that they believe in God as well. It makes a difference when you are talking to this person and you're just using language like God or creator, and just with the assumption that they are understanding you. And this has happened to me. I love it.
I've tried to share with you a few tools, a few resources. Each of us is engaged in an adventure, right? It's a unique adventure. Each of us has our own temperament, our own skills, our own background, and we are encountering people here and there in need. And what I would simply say is get started, make the attempt, try to understand how to minister, and we get better with it with time and with practice. It's a long-term endeavor to get good at doing this kind of thing. And what we need to do is wade in and start, right? And experiment and see what works, and each develop our own language, our own way of articulating it. And the hope here is I wanted to share some tools that maybe you can work with that might be helpful along the way, each of us in our own adventure of how to speak to people in the culture who are struggling and minister, really. I think my sense is if the mission of the revelation is to be fulfilled, I think as a whole, as a movement culture, the Urantia movement, I think part of what we need to do is become what I call a messenger people, right? We need to become good as the followers of previous revelations. We need to become good at understanding the core of our truth and conveying it to people in need. This is what Jesus exhorts us to do. And we need to do it in association with this amazing revelation. Take the treasures of it, learn how to articulate it, and share it with people where they are and with their need. Go ahead, Brad.
I liked how you concluded there talking about giving people a way to live. That reminds me of religion being a mode of living. You mentioned a sense of belonging, an antidote to crazy culture. I guess my reflection is I'm familiar here in the Phoenix metropolitan area with a really large evangelical church, like 35,000 people, and they say their vision is to reach the entire valley for Christ. And, they preach the love of God in the context of divine law, traditional kind of evangelical message. It seems to be effective. They seem to have a way to live, a sense of belonging, antidote to the crazy culture. What's your perspective on this family of God concept compared to these sort of what appear to be thriving traditional Christian approaches these days?
I think we have to work with the assumption that we're not the only ones trying to do good things in the world, and we're not the only ones that the angels and the celestials are working with to accomplish their purposes. So I think good things are going on in a number of different places, not only in Christianity, but in other religious traditions as well. I think there are two things I would say that my sense is we can do as well or better, frankly, than the established traditions and even Christianity. One is to convey a sense of Jesus' teachings that is, in a sense, it's more responsive to modern needs than I think what Christians have to work with, even the best of Christianity. And in two respects I can think of easily. One, related to the indwelling spirit. I think we have a sense of the intimacy of God and the possibility for an interior, deep and profound interior relationship that any human being can have with the presence of God inside of them, and where they can access love and feel loved and it's a kind of nourishment. And we spent a lot of time with that in the homecoming venue. How do you access the affection how do I access the affection, the love that God has for me? How do I experience it in a way that changes me and nourishes me, nurtures me, and begins to address the pain of what I might have experienced in life? I just think we have some particular tools and information, in a sense, that we have to help people understand how to access that the established traditions don't have. I think we've got better information. I think we have better information about the nature of the afterlife. And I think we have to get artful in saying, look, this is just the beginning. We are in a very early primitive state. All of us have this amazing adventure waiting for us out ahead in the cosmos when we look up at the starry realms. God has a tremendous adventure planned for us. It's not static, it's progressive, and it's thrilling. And we can't even imagine all the things we're going to get to do in this experience of moving forward in the family of God in the universe.
If you see a friend of yours and they're in one of these more traditional Christian communities and maybe that the altar call, they even were told, welcome to the family of God after they were baptized or saved. And they seem to be having their life stabilized. Is there anything that we ought to still do for them? Or can we say, well, they seem to be doing fine? Or do you think we're called to do something even with someone who's already found some sense of belonging, a way to live, an antidote for crazy culture?
I sort of considered almost as an interfaith venue at that point. If we've encountered someone who hasn't found the answers they need to find spiritual sustenance, that's one circumstance. But that's not the one you're describing. You're describing someone who has found what they need. They've got a living relationship with God. They have a sense of community. And so when I'm in that circumstance, whether it's Christian or Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist, or spiritual, not religious, and they're in some, sort of new truth venue, then I'm just one believer with another believer, and we're sharing each other's traditions for our mutual benefit and enjoying each other's company. I feel no need to convert them to the Urantia revelation. Because look, if they have a living relationship with God, they're going on to the mansion worlds, right? And on the mansion worlds, they're going to get everything we have in the book anyways. So there's no compelling need for me to convince them to read the Urantia book. We're just sharing. I'm trying to understand what's lovely in their tradition, and I like it that they understand and appreciate what's lovely in my tradition. So I share on that basis with an interfaith assumption. Peter, you want to share something?
Something Brad said kind of lit me off a little bit. He said, well, gosh, what about these other communities that, and I was just reading 175 today, that hold, what do they call it? The cocoon of the teachings of Jesus in the Christian religions. That,
Yeah, the religion of Jesus is slumbering. Yeah,
it's slumbering in a cocoon. I'm like, wow, gosh, isn't that amazing? The Catholic Church was growing closer, and not just the Catholic, the Christian Church is growing closer to everything I read in my fourth time through the Urantia book. If there are beautiful, wonderful things that the Christian church is doing now, maybe in Phoenix with 35,000, maybe in Phoenix with 1.7 million, would it change your answer at all to the question that Brad asked you, which is, what about those guys? What can we do with them? Or you can still get an answer, well, we have different traditions and, we're
so
better.
let me go ahead and respond. There are different audiences out there. One of the things modern social scientists are recognizing, and it's a trend that is growing and rapidly picking up. And one of the ways they express it is that by 2050, the group of people that identify as spiritual but not religious, who are not satisfied, they have some sense of belief in God, but they're not satisfied with the established traditions, will outweigh every other religious group. So there are effective churches, but the broad trend is for people to be leaving institutional religion and looking for answers outside of institutional religion, because the old ways of looking at it are not working for many people. For many people, they are working and they are being done well. That's great. I don't think that's our mission field. I think our mission field is the people who are struggling with not finding it in the established traditions and are hungry to find it but don't know how. And I think we have a vision. It's a vision of an upstepped understanding of the nature of many of the core aspects of the gospel that I don't think is being answered in churches. And they may be popular and there may be lots of people participating in them. But one of the statements that I've been thinking a lot about that the revelators make, and this is 100 years ago, and I think this statement is more relevant now than it was 100 years ago. They say that most Christians, most modern Christians, are unwitting secularists. What does that mean? What it means to me is that they're participating in a community, and they're not really and many of them are not having, and I think this is true in many of the other established traditions. There isn't a real intimate personal relationship with God that dominates their week every day, their lives day in and day out. It's something that it's a box that gets checked. They go to church, or they go to synagogue or mosque. They take care of that, and then the rest of their lives they don't think much about God. So the issue for me is that the religion that the Urantia book talks about is a moment-to-moment affair. It's every day. It becomes the dominant experience in our lives, is our relationship with God and how it changes the way we live and who we are. And I think there are lots of people in Christian churches and established traditions who are finding what they need and aren't unwitting secularists. But I think many of them are unwitting secularists. They're living pretty superficially in their religion. But the core issue for me, just in response to your question, Peter, is the growing numbers of people who are disaffected and have no established religious home, and yet they're desperately hungry for orientation and values. And I think we have new information that can be articulated in a way that reaches that population, that audience, and and also can be effective in the growth of the interfaith world. So I just think there are lots of venues, and there's growing populations that need what we can provide, which is a much more sophisticated articulation of a set of living spiritual relationships that doesn't require an institutional experience in order to be had. Go ahead, Alden. Hi, Alden. Nice to see you.
In response to Peter's idea of, what do we really offer that's different than that they already have? And I think that the Urantia community has an opportunity to offer healing in a way that hasn't been offered before. And that's because of this fundamental equality involved with the Urantia book, and the equality of women, the fact that there's no real cachet given to priesthood, and there's a strong sense of the equality of all the sons of God. When Jesus was leading the disciples, it was a group process. It wasn't like a leadership-oriented association. And I think this is a new kind of religious approach that the old style traditional Protestants and Catholics have not done. To become one, you can't become one if somebody's at a higher station than you or a lower station. Everyone has to be equal, or the oneness result of healing cannot occur.
I want to return to the question various of you raised, which is, what is it that we have to add to the equation that's unique? I think the idea that the experience of a way of life and spiritual family is a ubiquitous phenomenon that really is not determined by which institutional religious group you're affiliated with. It is something that we can put front and center in a way that is hard for any other group to do. The idea that the parent-child relationship is an experience that is universally available, whether you're a Catholic, a Protestant, a Jew, a Hindu, a Muslim, or none of the above. It's a generic phenomenon that is our legacy with God, right? And that our relationship as sisters and brothers transcends every other institutional limitation or definition. It's a universal phenomenon, a global phenomenon, and indeed a universal phenomenon in the sense that it stretches out of this life into what comes after this life and into the cosmos as a whole. That's unique to the Urantia revelation, that conception. And the other thing that I think is really critical is the healing impact of God's love is universally available. You don't have to subscribe to a set of doctrines or belong to a particular group in order to access that basic phenomenon in the spiritual life. Anyone can have it simply by seeking and asking for it. There's another theme that sort of got teased by someone that I want to address, and that is someone was talking about the initial step of faith. And there's something that I think it's important, and that is for people who have been wounded in life, the initial stages of the spiritual life are often challenging, because I think it takes a great deal of courage to ask God for God's love and to rest in the relationship with God, to trust enough to a higher authority figure to come like a little child and say, pick me up, hold me, love me. right? Because that's the fundamental yearning, is to be loved and nurtured for every human being. And that's something I think we can articulate well to people, is it doesn't matter what you believe, what your doctrine or lack of doctrine is. What matters is you'll come with trust and ask for relationship with God and have the courage to ask, even though you've been through some hard stuff, and trust that God will give you that love if you will rest in that worship experience. That's something I think we're uniquely, I won't say uniquely, but we're well equipped to convey, that it doesn't matter what group you affiliate with or what doctrine you have. What matters is the essence of the experience of coming into that intimate relationship with God, who is inside of you and will be with you whether you're going to the Catholic Church or the Hindu temple or none of the above. So I think we're well equipped to do that in a way that other religious groups are less well equipped. I don't hear that in other religious groups. It's more proprietary. We're speaking about something that's universally available. Diana and Norman, and then Danny.
What is it in these other, what is not an other, but what is it in these religions? The Catholic religion, the other religion, the one over there in Phoenix, that draws and holds people, not just us old people, but the young people, the children. What is it? It's passion, and it's the way the passion is expressed, and it's the message that is really simple for them. People want a simple message. Lots of people aren't intellectual. They're not going to be able to deal with all of the beautiful mental concepts that are contained in this book. Even when you narrow it down as you do, Marvin, they want a simple message. And what are they told? God loves you. He sent his son to this earth to save you from your sins. You believe in Jesus and you will have everlasting life.
Yeah.
I think this movement does not have the focus to do the job that you want it to do, except on an individual basis. We're not going to have groups of people coming together to hear this message the way they come every Sunday into a church to hear the message that's given to them. We can only approach people on an individual basis. That's the way we're structured.
I think the challenge is the one that I've tried to articulate and that you're addressing as well. The initial challenge, distilling the essence, the spiritual essence of what's in this text, and getting good at articulating a message that speaks to people out in the culture broadly with that central spiritual message and the heart of it in a way that shares with people something they can do in order to get into living relationship with God. That's the challenge. That's our challenge as a culture, as a Urantia movement culture. Not all of us are going to be called to do that, but enough of us need to be called to do that, to simplify the message, articulate it, and get ready to share it and in the uplift of global culture. And if we can do that, we will be successful. That will require, if we're going to be effective, not only the work of individual human beings scattered hither and yon, which is good, but it won't be sufficient. It will also require organization. There's a tremendous amount of information in the text that says people in groups accomplish things. We are beginning to ramp up as a movement to say, what are we supposed to do? How do we organize to do it well? How do we use our institutions, not depend upon them, but work with them to accomplish the purposes in an organized and concerted fashion? It's beginning to happen. We're still a very young movement. So I think we will address it. I think there will be things like the Family of God Fellowship and other institutional expressions to accomplish this. And we're going to get over our bugaboo of distrusting any organized religious effort or religious leadership and all those things, which I think are immaturities in our movement. They're simplistic. The lessons of the text are very clear. The relators say you want to get something done, you're going to have to organize to do it, and some degree of institutionalization is necessary to that effort. We just need to do it well rather than poorly. But if we don't engage in organized efforts to articulate the gospel and reach out to the culture, we simply will not be effective as a movement. That's end of story. So I want to go ahead. I'm mindful of our time.
I have been reading the Urantia since the early 80s, and I found trying to share it. I would also say I was raised Southern Baptist. I'm a fundamental Christian, and how it compared when I tried to share the Urantia as sharing the Bible. Well, in Christianity, you want to witness and share the gospel to others. And I found in that case a lot of rejection. With the Urantia, unfortunately, I found just a lot of passiveness, I guess is the word. I had to curb my enthusiasm. My fear, too, which you've just helped Marvin explain, was I hate to see the Urantia become this gigantic religion with 400,000 or 3 billion or whatever. Is that selfish, or is that what can happen when man gets too involved?
You say you would like to see that happen, or you would hate to see that happen? You'd hate to see that happen. Well, I think
but you kind of gave me some different line of thinking just now. So, that we do have to maybe organize more, but how big and how man can really start messing up everything. So
first of all, I don't think you have much to be scared of. I don't think we're going to become a 400 million movement anytime soon. I think it's going to be a long time. I'm not sure we'll ever be anything quite that large. What we may be is a seminal leadership movement that's more strategic, but that's a whole other conversation. The thought I want to share with you all in closing is, and this is to some extent in summation of what we've been doing, what we've been talking about here, the whole subject is, I've been thinking recently that we can conceive of what we're supposed to be doing in 3 different ways. And it relates to what it is that's centric in our movement and in our endeavors, right? We can be Urantia Book centric, we can be Jesus centric, or we can be gospel centric, right? What I've been trying to articulate today is a vision of imperative that is gospel centric. It's centered around a way of living in a set of spiritual family relationships. I think it's consistent with what the revelators have given us as a set of imperatives, because the way they describe reality is the first thing that God did is to become a parent to a child, and they together become co-parents to a second child, and they formed family. The initial act in creation was not let there be light. The initial act in creation was let there be family relationships. Let there be persons, and let those persons be in loving family relationship, parent to child and sister to brother. And let that be the model for all of reality forever in the cosmos. Now, you can argue with me, I don't think you're going to be successful. That's the reality that the revelators articulate. And they're saying, go out and do likewise. Make that the heart of the experience you have in this life and in eternity. It's all about persons and relationships between persons in spiritual family relationship. That's my sense. And so the gospel can, our efforts can be gospel centric. We can easily become, and we're already on the pathway to becoming, the religion about the Urantia book. Forget it, put it aside. That's the wrong centrality. That's not what needs to be the center. If we make the mistake of saying this is about telling people about this book, and Jesus and the gospel are ancillary in support of that, we're going to go sideways. If we make it about Jesus and say it's all about accepting Jesus and Jesus will save you, we're making the same mistake as the Christian church. And the book and the gospel are sort of supportive to the centrality of Jesus, we're making a mistake. If what we say is, this is a fundamentally different way to live, a way of intimate relationship with God and relationships with each other that reflect our status as sisters and brothers, and we articulate the gospel clearly in a way, say, the Urantia book is in support of that mission. And Jesus and his life and teachings exemplifies that mission. And our mission is to transform and uplift global culture so that it reflects the universal family of God. Then I think we're in business. That's gospel-centric. I think the revelators give us a set of marching orders, and we have a lot of work to do. So let's take a moment and allow God's presence inside and the Spirit of truth, the Master's presence, to sort and sift and integrate what we've shared, and help us to prepare to cooperate and work with them in the endeavor to uplift our global culture. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Mother Spirit. Thank you to our wonderful angelic sisters. Help us to stay grounded in your presence and inspired by your revelation in this text that you've given us, this amazing fifth epical revelation. Help us to be intelligent and dedicated in discerning how best to serve, how to minister, to be compassionate to the struggles of our sisters and brothers out there in the sea, the turbulent sea of normlessness and confusion in our culture. Help us to move forward with your help, to share spiritual truth in a way that touches people where they are and helps them to move deep into relationship with you, Father. Amen.